Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Nikki Salisbury, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. Directions members may download this presentation at www.directionsonmicrosoft.com/slides. This presentation is being recorded for on-demand viewing and will be available next week on the members portal. All lines have been placed on mute, so if you have a question, please enter it into the question panel, and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. The topic for today is Power Platform and is being presented by Directions Analyst Rob Sanfilippo. Take it away, Rob.
Thank you, Nikki. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm talking about Power Platform technology and licensing. So let's move on to the next slide and I'll tell you what's ahead. Today I'll be discussing the technical and licensing aspects of Power Platform. I'll be concentrating on Power Apps and Power Automate, since these are the oldest and the most commonly used pieces of the platform. But I'll also get into Copilot Studio, which is the newer offering that's seen several updates in recent months. And along the way, I'll talk about Dataverse and AI Builder as well. So let's move right on. Next slide. First, let's talk about Directions. For those not familiar with Directions on Microsoft, we are an independent IT planning, information, and advisory service. We're focused exclusively on Microsoft enterprise technologies since 1992. And when we say independent, we mean that we don't work for Microsoft, we don't speak for Microsoft. Our only mission is to provide you with the impartial facts and informed insights you need to intelligently evaluate, plan for, and purchase Microsoft technologies and services. We provide a plethora of products and services, including detailed reports, evaluation kits, roadmaps covering cloud and on-premises technologies, and our world-famous licensing bootcamp and negotiation service. All right, next slide. Just a little bit about me. I am an analyst here at Directions. I've been here for 16 years. My expertise, or at least the areas I cover, are Azure, Power Platform, GitHub, Copilot, a few other things. And just my background experience, I've been in the software industry for 34 years. I worked at Microsoft for 14 of those years. And I worked on the R&D teams for products like Exchange Server, Speech Server, and Commerce Server, and BizTalk over those years. So let's move on to our topic. The Power Platform set of services is part of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. These services focus on simplifying line of business processes and access to and modification of organizational data from all sources. The platform is centered around low-code development tools, which enable so-called citizen developers, sometimes also called makers, to implement solutions, reducing the burden on organizational IT departments. Citizen developers are people whose primary job is not software development, but they have motivation to build solutions that address the requirements of their department, team, or personal responsibilities. I list Power Platform components here, with the first three a bit larger, since those are the ones I'll be focusing on today. Power Apps is a service for creating line of business apps. And Power Automate is a service for creating line of business workflows. Copilot Studio is a service for creating intelligent agents that assist users via natural language interactions. And these agents can use AI and integrate with Microsoft 365 Copilot. The other Power Platform components include Dataverse, which is a data store for databases, files, and logs, along with a predefined set of entities and the capability to run business processes. It helps Power Platform users work with data without introducing external databases, such as SQL Server. And Power Pages simplifies building web pages in an analogous way to how Power Apps simplifies building apps. AI Builder simplifies working with machine learning models, such as those that recognize images and forms. And finally, Power BI is a comprehensive tool for working with business reporting and data visualization, but I won't be covering Power BI today. Okay, next slide. So let's start with Power Apps. Power Apps allows the creation of line of business apps without expensive development team resources by enabling citizen developers to build apps. Apps implemented using Power Apps can access and modify organizational data to simplify common processes that are not addressed by solutions provided by internal IT teams or third parties. However, Power Apps development requires an understanding of general software development concepts, such as working with data sources, UI design, controls, properties, and events, and basic coding with the PowerFX language, which is similar to Excel functions. Furthermore, administrator oversight and management are required for governance. A Power Apps includes the following components for building, testing, publishing, running, and managing apps. You get a web-based development environment for makers, which is analogous to an integrated development environment, or IDE, used by professional developers. You get UI controls such as forms, edit boxes, and buttons, which are used to implement UIs, at least for some types of the apps. You get testing, debugging, and publishing tools, which are available in that web-based development environment. You get a runtime for your published apps, which is hosted by the Microsoft 365 service. And you get this logical isolation model called environments, which lets administrators separate groups of users for different access to data and tools. And you also get many other features that allow admins to govern Power Apps usage. It's not just environments, there's lots more controls in the admin center. Okay, next slide. So let me just give you some examples of the types of solutions that can be created using Power Apps. Power Apps could be used to build an asset management tool that keeps track of equipment and devices. It could store and display images of the assets, their locations, current users, and availability. Another example is a service desk app that would track requests, their owners, status, and remaining tasks of a particular request. You might have a room booking app that could help users find and reserve meeting spaces, including images of the room, the equipment in those rooms, the location of the rooms, and their availability. Now, Power Apps includes a catalog of app templates to help makers get started building apps like these with pre-designed UIs and configurations that will speed development since users won't have to start from scratch. Next slide. Here's a screenshot of the Power Apps Dev portal. That's that web-based portal I mentioned earlier. Here, we're in the Create page, and you have choices to start a new app from scratch or from templates. So you can see at the bottom all those little images of templates that you can start with, ideas that Microsoft's giving makers or citizen developers to start with, so they don't have to start with a blank screen. But this is the Create page where you're just starting to build an app. And if we go to the next slide, here we see a screenshot of a Canvas type app being developed. So the middle section shows a UI page that is being worked on. It's that one, Contoso coffee machines. Controls such as buttons, edit boxes, and others that work with data and images can be dropped onto the page and arranged as desired. And the pane to the left shows the controls that are on the page. And when a control is selected, the pane on the right allows viewing and editing the properties of that control. And these properties can contain values that might be using that PowerFX language, again, similar to Excel functions, to write a little bit of connective code to make the events of these controls work together. This design environment is really similar to Visual Basic, if you've ever worked with that tool that's been around for decades, and other UI-centric development tools. Now, apps can be tested within the portal, and when they're ready, the user can publish an app, which makes it available to users that have the appropriate shared access to that app. So yeah, next slide. Okay, here are some considerations for planning Power Apps adoption. Now, Power Apps can be licensed in several ways, and optimal licensing will depend on your usage scenarios. Basic Power Apps capabilities are included with most Microsoft 365 and Office 365 subscriptions, and these may suffice for many customers. But upgraded Power Apps capabilities are available with additional licensing, and capacity add-ons can incur further costs. Now, beyond Power Apps licenses, customers may need to purchase extra capacities for Dataverse and AI Builder usage. Those would incur additional costs. I'll be talking about those later. Most importantly, Customers should evaluate all the licensing options before adopting Power Apps in the organization to form a purchasing plan that addresses their expected usage. However, that usage is likely to change, either requiring additional or reduced licensing and perhaps different types of licenses to optimize your spending on Power Apps. So customers should regularly reevaluate their Power Apps licensing purchases. Now, next slide. Here are some further considerations for Power Apps deployment. As I just mentioned, customers should create an initial purchasing plan that addresses expected usage. However, that usage is likely to change. Could require additional reduced licensing, perhaps different types of license. So you should regularly reevaluate licensing purchases. Next, governance of Power Apps deployments is critical. If policies, processes, and configurations are not established early on, deployments can quickly become disorganized as users create, publish, and share apps. And a disorganized deployment will create extra work later to maintain and clean up. Power Apps can be administered using Power Platform environments. These are logical isolation containers that let administrators assign access to and separate groups of apps, such as by department or possibly by staging dev, test, and production areas. There's a feature called managed environments. I'm going to talk about that later, and it's going to come up many times during my talk. Managed environments greatly enhances the governance capability of environments, especially when many apps and many users work with a Power Apps deployment. My last point here is that Power Apps licensing is technically enforced in most cases, which prevents users from performing operations that are not allowed by the user subscription licenses that have been purchased and assigned to them by the organization. That's opposed to traditional on-premises software where license enforcement is often up to the customer, which makes it easy to deploy and use software in ways that violate licenses, potentially leading to unexpected expenses. So one of the good things about cloud services in general, and of course here with Power Platform, is that almost all of the licensing is technically enforced, so you're unlikely to go out of compliance just due to your usage. Rather, you'll find that when you try to do something, a user tries to do some activity that they're not licensed for, they'll be prohibited for doing that, or they won't even see the option to do that, and then they'll have to talk to their administrator to get the appropriate license to do what they want to do. Okay, next slide. Now this diagram, this is one of the central pieces here, especially for Power Apps. It shows the essential Power Apps licensing model. You can see there are 4 license types to consider, and they gain benefits going left to right. So that is a license type includes the features to the licenses to its left, and then it adds more on. So the surrounding shape keeps containing everything before it. So you can see what you're getting as you increase across these different license plans. These 4 licenses shown here are basic, that's the blue one on the left, pay as you go, or PAG, per app, and premium. And I'll explain each of these in the following slides. But this diagram is a good quick reference. It's published on our site, of course. It's available there, and it will help you evaluate the choices as you create a purchasing plan. So Power Apps licensing can be viewed as a freemium plan. So we've all heard this word freemium, where a vendor gives you something for free and you get used to it, or you really like it and then you want more, and now you got to pay. But maybe what you get for free is enough. You never know. So some Power Apps benefits are free and included with Microsoft 365 and Office 365 subscriptions. If those benefits aren't enough to meet your requirements, you can purchase the higher level Power Apps licenses. The free plan that's included with 365 is called Power Apps Basic. And it gives the rights listed here, which include the ability to run an unlimited number of Canvas type, but not model-driven type or cards type apps. Now, Canvas type apps let users design a UI in the way I showed earlier with the Power Apps Dev Portal screenshot. Model-driven type apps generate a UI based on your specified data sources. And that saves a maker the trouble of laying out UIs if their main goal is to simplify access to data. And then cards type apps are just pieces of UI that are reusable in multiple places, such as different apps and websites. Now, apps can only use data in the basic plan from within the 365 tenant and in other sources made available through so-called standard connectors. Now, there are hundreds of connectors that are out there for Power Apps and also Power Automate, and those allow you to use other Microsoft and external data sources with Power Apps and Power Automate. These connectors can access solutions such as Outlook, Azure, GitHub, Azure DevOps, Amazon, AWS, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and the list goes on and on. And furthermore, organizations can build their own custom connectors to work with proprietary data sources and others for which connectors do not exist. These connectors, again, they're categorized as standard, premium, and then custom, but Power Apps Basic only lets you use the standard connectors. Power Apps Basic also provides the right to run Power Automate flows as long as they're run within the context of a Power Apps app. And Power Apps Basic provides limited use of Dataverse through the so-called Dataverse for Teams, which is available for apps that run within the context of Teams, albeit with a subset of the features the full Dataverse offers. So for example, Dataverse for Teams has lower storage limits. It doesn't support advanced data types, doesn't provide non-relational storage for logs, and it offers less granular security than the full Dataverse. And Dataverse for Teams is only available within Teams. So apps that run outside of Teams have no Dataverse support at all with Power Apps Basic. Okay, next one. Now, considering the benefits that come with that so-called free Power Apps Basic, what are the advantages of buying higher level Power Apps licenses? And here are some of them. The higher licenses will enable the governance features of managed environments. Again, there's that term, managed environments. These are significant. The next slide, I'm going to specifically talk what are managed environments. Model-driven and card apps are only supported with additional licenses beyond basic. So model-driven in particular is enticing because it eliminates most of the UI design work of building an app by providing these pre-built, pre-generated UIs for viewing and modifying the data that was specified by the maker. So that could enable a larger group of makers to build apps. Next reason is connectors. Standard connectors are supported with basic, but premium and custom connectors will require additional licensing. And there are hundreds more premium connectors than there are standard connectors. And popular third-party solutions such as Salesforce, SAP, ServiceNow can only be accessed using premium connectors. And then support for all Dataverse functionality and the ability to access it from Power Apps that are not running in Teams is going to require additional licensing. And finally, upgraded Power Apps licensing brings some support for Power Pages apps, which is not included with Power Apps Basic. Okay, said managed environments several times. Let's talk about them now. Managed environments are a major upgrade in governance capabilities over the regular or standard environments. But like these regular environments, managed environments are an administration feature that works with all Power Platform components, not just Power Apps. Customers with larger Power Apps deployments with many users or many apps or both, they're going to be much better able to govern their deployments when using managed environments. There are more than a dozen governance features that come with these managed environments. Here are some examples. Groups enable the creation of a hierarchy of containers rather than a flat list, which is all that is supported with regular environments. Sharing limits enhance access control capabilities by allowing user groups to be blocked from access, and an administrator can specify a limit to the number of users that can access an environment, which could be helpful during test rollouts. Usage insights. It's an auto-generated email to administrators. It summarizes the most popular apps, their makers, and inactive resources that might need cleanup. Data policies allow restrictions to be placed on which connectors can be used by preventing connectors to consumer sites where data could be leaked. And custom welcome content displays organization-specific guidance to makers in the dev portal. Now, managed environments are activated on a per environment basis. So you'll still have your regular environments, but you'll be turning on managed environment feature in the environments that you want to be managed. Each user in a managed environment must be assigned a license above the basic level licenses that's included with M365, because remember, Power Apps Basic does not support managed environments. Okay, on to Power Apps Premium. In the next few slides, we're going to discuss the licenses above Power Apps Basic. So Premium is a per user license. It's the most expensive Power Apps license, but it provides the maximum capabilities for working with a service. So organizations that deploy a large number of apps, have many users that use multiple apps, are the best candidates for Power Apps Premium license. The premium license, it's $20 per user per month. The rate's reduced to $12 per user per month for customers who purchase more than 2,000 premium licenses. Of course, those are the full prices that without your particular customer discount. So you can think about what you might get off those prices, but those are the full prices that you begin with. Power Apps Premium gives a user full access to all Power Apps features. And so that includes the ability to run an unlimited number of Power Apps and Power Pages apps within the user's tenancy, the ability to run Power Apps and Power Pages apps that the user has been invited to use in another organization's tenancy of the service. So that capability could be valuable when an organization has multiple tenancies, such as after a merger or acquisition. You get the right to run the model-driven and the cards type apps. You can run apps that use the premium and custom connectors. You can use full Dataverse functionality for any app. You also get some Dataverse and AI Builder capacities with each user license. So that keeps adding up and it actually gets pooled to the entire organization. And then of course you get that managed environment support, which again is critical for governance. Next is the Power Apps per app license. So Power Apps per app, it gives a single user rights to run a single Power Apps or Power Pages app. And that costs $5 per user per app per month. Per app licensing, it's a good option for organizations in early adoption phases. So when they're piloting the service, for example. It's also a good option when a small number of apps will be deployed and when each user will only use a small number of apps. So if you're going to use this license, you'll have an administrator sign a per app license to an environment. Once it's assigned to an environment, you can pick the app within that environment where you're going to use that license. And then finally, the user can be attached to the license when the app is shared to the user. So some thoughts around this is that if a user has a premium license, they will not consume a per app license because again, premium gives a user the rights to run an unlimited number of apps. They don't need a separate license for each app. Also, a per app license, it's more accurately a per user license because it allows a single user to run a single app. You're not licensing the app for everyone to use. You're licensing a particular app for one particular user. Also, freeing up a per app license for reassignment requires some admin action. It's not something an end user can do. And last, there's this caveat to consider in that if the same app is deployed to multiple environments, for example, to make a version of the app for each geographical region, you're going to need a separate license to run the app in each environment. Because remember, you assign a per app license to an environment, and then it's not usable by any other environments except that one. Okay, next slide. The last Power Apps license type is pay-as-you-go, PAG. So this PAG licensing incurs costs based on the number of monthly users of an app without assigning licenses to users. PAG licensing is $10 per active user per app per month. And this PAG billing uses what they call the Power Apps per app pay-as-you-go meter, which measures the number of unique users that access a pay-as-you-go enabled app during each month. So those users might change each month, but you get a certain number of them that are whatever number you use that app within the month, those unique users will increase that meter, and that's what you will pay on your bill when that comes. So this PAG licensing can reduce costs for specific scenarios, such as early testing and capacity estimation, but it's likely to cost more compared to other licensing options for most production use. PEG licensing can be a better option than per app licensing for rarely used apps. So you might have an app that's used a small number of months each year, like a performance review apps, maybe that would be used twice a year, once a year even. And that could be perhaps optimally licensed using the pay-as-you-go option. As with the per app license, if a user already has a premium license, they're not going to increment the pay-as-you-go meter when they use that app because, again, they have the right to run as an unlimited number of apps with their premium license. When you use pay-as-you-go billing, it's billed and processed through a customer Azure subscription. So you will need an Azure subscription. Even if you're not using Azure, you'll just get your bills for Power App pay-as-you-go through that Azure subscription. And then these extras, some capacities used with Power Apps, or really any Power Platform component, can be increased by purchasing add-ons. And these include Dataverse database capacity, which is $40 per gigabyte per month. That sounds like a lot. Why $40 per gigabyte? Gigabytes are like free these days. The cost appears expensive, but it includes more than simple storage. It includes infrastructure capabilities like support for models and entities that Dataverse offers. And it also includes business intelligence processes that run within Dataverse. So it's not just storage, it's the capabilities of Dataverse you're paying for. There's also Dataverse log capacity, the ability to store non-relational data in Dataverse. That costs $10 per gigabyte per month if you're going to add on more capacity. There's also Dataverse file capacity. You can use it like a file system hard drive, and that's $2 per gigabyte per month. Next, we have AI Builder credits. Those are $500 per unit per month. What is a unit? A unit includes 1 million AI Builder credits, and these credits are consumed by the machine learning models that you use with AI Builder. So it's based mostly on the language model that's being used by your machine learning models and the operation being performed, which might be text analysis or image classification or object detection. So you'll have to consult a chart to determine how many credits you're going to burn through and the kind of work you're doing to determine what kind of AI Builder capacity you're going to need. So Power Platform licenses have many cases of overlap where a license for one component supports usage of a different component within Power Platform. Power Pages, it was formerly a part of Power Apps, and it was called Power Apps Portals. It's now just called Power Pages, and it's its own separate component. Power Pages lets makers build externally facing web apps and internal sites too. It uses web technologies, and makers can access site code while building sites. Power Apps Premium supports running unlimited Power Pages sites, so separate Power Pages licensing isn't required if you have Power Apps Premium. And Power Apps Per App can be used to run, license one Power Pages app instead of a Power Apps app. So a Power Apps Per App, either one, Power Pages or Power App, but only one. Power Apps provides the rights to run Power Automate flows as long as they're triggered from within a Power App. So if you have a Power Apps Premium license, you can run flows all day long as they're called from a Power Apps app. You can't run standalone Power Automate flows unless you have separate Power Automate licensing, which I'm going to talk about subsequently here. And then last, Dynamics 365 and Power Platform licensing have a lot of overlap. Most Dynamics 365 licensed users are permitted to build apps with Power Apps and Power Automate within the context of Dynamics 365 modules that they're licensed to access without purchasing separate Power Apps or Power Automate licenses. So if you're a Dynamics customer, really take a good look at the rights that you're given for Power Platform through your Dynamics licensing before going off to purchase additional Power Apps or Power Automate licensing. Okay, next, request limits. There are some request limits imposed on Power Apps customers. And these are based on the number of calls to the service, such as requests made through connectors and into Dataverse. Now, the limits are quite high, and the intention of them is to prevent the service from being overwhelmed. It's not that Microsoft is trying to throttle user users just to get more money out of them. They're just concerned with keeping the service running. So Power Apps Premium allows the most daily per user requests at 40,000, and the other licensing types allow 6,000 within Power Apps. Okay, that was my coverage of Power Apps. Let's switch from Power Apps to Power Automate. A lot of the elements discussed with Power Apps are the same or work similarly with Power Automate, so I'm not going to have every single matching slide. A lot of that I already talked about with Power Automate, and it applies to with Power Apps, and it applies to Power Automate. But what is Power Automate? It enables line of business or LOB process experts to write simple workflows. These workflows, which are called flows in Power Automate, can access and modify organizational data and run tasks in internal and external services to perform processes that are not addressed by solutions provided by internal IT teams or third parties. Power Automate can be used to automate processes of several types, such as the following: organization-wide processes that may include human approval steps, such as a workflow for provisioning equipment or submitting travel expenses. Can have processes that address the need of a specific user, such as a workflow that generates a weekly personal status report. You can have unattended processes that run in the background without an interactive user that are triggered by an event or on a schedule, such as a flow that regularly syncs disparate data stores. And then you can have processes that use robotic process automation, or RPA, where simulated keyboard and mouse entry mimic the actions that a human user would otherwise perform. And this enables the automation of legacy solutions that cannot be automated through APIs that they provide. Okay, next. So there are several types of flows. These vary by hosting location, human interaction, and automation technique. The types of flows deployed within an organization impacts your licensing requirements. So cloud flows are automation processes hosted and run within the Microsoft 365 cloud. They can access Microsoft and third-party data and execute tasks and services such as Exchange Online, SharePoint, Dropbox, ServiceNow, and SAP. A cloud flow does not display a UI as it runs. Cloud flows can be automated, which it can be triggered by an action. They can be instant, triggered by a user, or they could be scheduled, where they're triggered at a specific time. So for example, a cloud flow could send an email notification. A file is added to a SharePoint site. It could update databases across separate systems, or it could monitor social media for mentions of an organization. Then you have business process flows. These guide a user through the steps of a business process. These are interactive flows. They have UIs, and they can require approval from users to proceed through their steps. So for example, a business process flow could guide a user through a customer service procedure, a sales lead follow-up, or the steps to provision equipment. And you have desktop flows. These run processes on a local machine or customer-hosted VM. And they use that RPA, that robotic process automation that I described in the previous slide. Now, cloud flows and desktop flows can run unattended, either locally on a Windows server or Windows client computer, or on a VM. They can also be hosted by Microsoft in a VM in a Microsoft data center. And the chart here summarizes the characteristics for each of these types of flows. All right, next slide. So remember the Power Apps diagram of this design. Here's the one for Power Automate. It shows the essentials of the Power Automate licensing model. You can see there are 4 license types to consider. You have basic, premium, process, and hosted process. This diagram is a good quick reference while you evaluate the choices and create your purchasing plan. It's similar to Power Apps. You have a freemium model providing basic Power Automate benefits as a part of Microsoft 365 or Office 365 subscriptions, and then you get additional capabilities with standalone licenses. Now for Power Automate Basic, only the cloud flow type is supported. Remember I mentioned the types of flows earlier. Cloud flow is all you get with Basic. You also get access to standard connectors and Dataverse for Teams. I talked about these earlier with Power Apps. But when you upgrade to Premium, you get support for the other flow types. except for unattended flows, which require a process or hosted process license. You can see that sticking up the top. When you go onto process or hosted process, you get unattended. Premium also brings support for all connector types and full Dataverse, along with Dataverse and AI Builder capacities. Same idea that we saw with Power Apps. Managed environments are supported on all three license types above basic. Now, process is similar to Power Apps per app. It's essentially a per flow license, and it can be used to support unattended flows. Hosted process is the same as the process license, but it adds Microsoft hosting of unattended flows, so customers don't have to have their own dedicated resources to run those flows locally. Okay, next slide. There are 3 legacy Power Automate licenses that remain available. You're going to see these in the licensing guide. If you look them over, they can cause some confusion because they're not clearly marked as legacy, but they are with newer types superseding them. These are primarily for customers who have not yet renewed contracts that were made before these superseding licenses became available. So customers with the older licenses should upgrade to the newer replacements at their next renewals. So these 3 types, Power Automate per user is the old legacy option. It's superseded by Premium, which costs the same, but adds support for attended desktop flows and process mining. I didn't say a thing about process mining yet. It's a feature of Power Automate. It's a newer capability that works with data extracted from logs produced by any solution to visualize and analyze processes to help you understand, diagnose, and improve those processes. So you get the rights to that with Premium, but you wouldn't get it with the older per user legacy license. There's Power Automate per flow. That's superseded by Power Automate process and hosted process. The new licenses cost more, but they add benefits over per flow, such as support for unattended desktop flows and child flows. And furthermore, per flow has a minimum purchase requirement of 5 licenses, but process and hosted process don't have that minimum. Last, there's Power Automate unattended RPA add-on. That's superseded by Power Automate process and hosted process. Same price, but the newer license offer additional benefits such as support for child flows. Furthermore, unattended RPA add-on requires an associated premium or per flow license, whereas process and hosted process do not. You can run them standalone without having an underlying premium or per flow license. So those are all legacy. Okay, and then on to this Power Automate pay-as-you-go license, which is interesting because it's been in preview since July of 2022, almost 3 years. And this is the only pay-as-you-go option for Power Automate. It charges per flow run at a rate of 60 cents per run for an attended flow and $3 per run for unattended flows. These charges are billed through an Azure subscription, just like the pay-as-you-go and Power Apps. And cloud and desktop flows are supported, and run charges are only incurred for flows that use premium connectors. This pay-as-you-go billing could be used instead of purchasing premium process or hosted process licenses, depending on the type of flows that you're using it with. And it could be a good option for flows that are run infrequently, such as those seasonal employee performance or benefit reviews, or for trial runs of new flows. However, pay-as-you-go costs could be significantly higher than costs for other license types. So be careful where you turn this on if you're going to go with it. Also, the preview nature of the offering, which is kind of odd. I'm not sure the intent of that, why it hasn't just become generally available. And it could, but since it is in preview, it means it might be discontinued at any time without much advance notice. All right. Free licenses, this sounds enticing. So beyond the licenses I've discussed for Power Apps and Power Automate, there are 2 free offerings available, Trial and Developer Plan. The important item to note here is that administrators can block users from signing up for these. However, they aren't blocked by default. So users can go out and create these on their own without administrator approval by default within your tenancy if an administrator doesn't first turn the capability of self-service on these off. So the two types, trial licenses, it's 30 days, it's extendable to 90 days. It includes the benefits of a premium license. If trials are allowed, consider that admins must assist users when they move from a trial to a full license. That could mean some migration steps, such as moving existing apps and flows to different environments. And then you have the developer plan. It's similar, but it gives the user their own developer environment just for that one user. So the administrator will see these development environments show up if they're allowed to be acquired by users. Apps and flows created under the dev environment cannot be used in production according to the license. They could be used for production if the user does that, but the license does not allow that. So that's customer enforced. Unlike earlier I mentioned, most things are technically enforced with these services. Here's one thing that's not technically enforced, using flows and apps in production out of a dev plan. The dev plan includes the benefits of a premium license, and it could be useful for acceptance testing. Okay, Copilot Studio. Now we get into the really modern stuff. Copilot Studio is the evolution of the former Power Virtual Agents component of Power Platform, just called Power Studio or Copilot Studio now. So Microsoft is emphasizing an agentic approach to its AI-based assistance, where agents can extend Microsoft 365 Copilot and be made available in other so-called channels such as Teams, SharePoint, and web apps. These generative AI-driven assistants can perform tasks within focused domains, such as working with internal LLB apps and retrieving data from specific documents and databases. These agents can simplify processes and save time by retrieving customer-specific information and performing customer-specific tasks interactively or autonomously. They can be built with no-code techniques using Copilot Studio, and there are pre-built agents that Microsoft offers right out of the box. Now, the licensing model for agents is very new and complex, and several updates to the licensing scheme just arrived a couple weeks ago. The cost of running agents is based on a unit called messages, and messages are billed through a pay-as-you-go meter, and the number of messages consumed by agents is determined by several factors, including the number of responses that an agent generates, the type of responses it's generating, where the agent is deployed. In other words, the channel where it's deployed. That could be Microsoft 365 Copilot, or it might be within your company website. Whether the user is running the agent is assigned a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. There's a lot of free agent usage that comes along with the 365 Copilot license. And then whether the agent is autonomous or is run interactively by a user. All those elements there in that bulleted list are going to affect how many messages are consumed and billed under your pay-as-you-go subscription for Copilot Studio agents. So if we go to the next slide, here's a page right out of Microsoft's April 2025 Power Platform Licensing Guide. It shows the license model for Copilot Studio. You can see that billing is based on the factors I described in the previous slide. Messages cost 1 cent each, but they can be purchased in packs that offer an effective 20% savings for an upfront commitment. And packs are shown in the middle column here. Only one pack size is offered right now. It includes 25,000 messages for $200. This rightmost column shows that users with a Microsoft 365 Copilot license get a substantial amount of free agent usage as long as the agents are used from within Microsoft 365 Copilot, or actually Teams or SharePoint as well. Okay, I got one more slide, and it's this one, just to get you all confused right at the end, but I'm showing the way message consumption by agents is calculated. Again, this is a page out of the licensing guide for Power Platform, April 25. This is a new matrix that just began in April. If you go back to March, it's way different. It's much simpler, so it's only gotten more complex. You can see this complexity in all these rows and all the descriptions. This is how messages are consumed. It's going to be difficult, if even possible, for customers to closely estimate the number of messages their agents will consume, especially when deployments are large and disparate agent types are deployed. And furthermore, an agent response can fall into multiple rows of this matrix, and the messages consumed for each row are added cumulatively to that pay-as-you-go meter. It's not one or the other. If it falls into multiple rows, you get billed for all of those rows. There is one bit of good news here. There was a reduction in messages consumed by Microsoft Graph-grounded agent responses. On April 1st, that number was reduced from 30 messages to 10 messages. So those agents, if you're using agents grounded in Microsoft Graph through your 365 subscription, you might see some reduction in the cost of those as of April 1st. Okay, my last slide, some resources. We have a kit for Power Platform. So we've had many reports and resources on Power Platform over the years. You know, Power Platform is about 9 years old now. It's been around for a while. So we have a lot of reports over time. Lots of things have changed. Here's some specific reports on Power Apps that are very new: an executive focus, a technical report, and a licensing report. Same thing for Power Automate, very new and up to date. Benefits and risk, how it works, and licensing. And then some relatively new reports on Copilot Studio and agents to talk about that very confusing matrix that I just showed up on the last slide. Okay, and so I am going to turn it back over to Nikki.
Thanks, Rob. That was great. Speaking of resources, I just wanted to quickly share a few as we wait for questions to come in, and I promise to keep it brief so we can get right into Q&A. I know it's a fan favorite. The first is our member portal, and one of the advantages of a Directions membership is access to our member portal, where we have detailed licensing guides, product roadmaps, recordings of previous webinars, and a ton of other resources to help you stay up to date and in the know. If you're a member and you need help accessing the portal, you can email us at service@directionsonmicrosoft.com. And if you're not a member and you'd like to learn more, email us at sales@directionsonmicrosoft.com. And next up, our ever popular webinars. Our next webinar is on Thursday, May 22nd at 10 a.m. Pacific, and the topic will be Microsoft 365 for Government, and it will be presented by Directions analyst Wes Miller, and I hope you can join us. And licensing training. If understanding the complex landscape of licensing is crucial to your role, we offer Microsoft licensing boot camps and EA negotiation workshops that are considered to be industry-leading trainings in this space. We offer them both online and in person, and our next offering is actually next week in Atlanta, Georgia, if you'd like to join us. There's still space available, and if the timing doesn't work for you or if virtual format works better, our next offering is July 14th through 18th. To register or learn more, visit our website, directionsonmicrosoft.com. And finally, don't forget that we offer consulting and advisory services. We'll help you level the playing field with Microsoft with our behind-the-scenes EA negotiation support, or verify your licensing position with accuracy with our audit defense service. Everything from strategy assessments to ongoing expert desk support, our industry veterans are here to help. If you want to learn more about our advisory services and how they can benefit your organization, please email us at sales@directionsonmicrosoft.com. Okay, I sped through that. Want to jump into Q&A if you're ready, Rob. Rob, are you ready?
Sorry, yeah, I was getting off of mute. Yep, I'm ready.
Oh, no worries, I figured. Okay,
Okay.
First question, how much Dataverse log capacity comes with each Power App and Power Automate license?
Okay, yeah, so I talked about some of the capacity you get, and if you were paying close attention, there was file capacity and database capacity listed, but there is a third capacity with Dataverse. It's just log, and that's the question here. So it's interesting because with those licenses, you don't get additional log capacity per Power Apps or Power Automate license, but you do get some base capacity for the tenant upon your first purchase of either type of license. And it depends on the type of license you purchase. If it's premium, you get 2 gigs of log capacity. If it's a different type of license, I think you get, it's like 250 or 200 megabytes. So it's lower. Premium will give you more, but you don't get additional capacity with each license that you purchase. You only get some upfront. Actually, I just looked at it. It's 200 megabytes you'll get for non-premium licenses with Power Automate, Power Apps. So you won't be accruing more and more capacity of logs the more user licenses you purchase for either of those. You'll have to just purchase extra add-on capacity, and I showed the rates for that on one of the slides.
Great, thank you, Rob. Okay, next question. So there's the person that submitted this is kind of framing up the scenario, and then I have the question at the second part of it.
I think, it's a pretty long question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was reading that, and it is definitely an interesting question. I think we should just take that one offline, just because it's very detailed. I'm very happy to answer that and look at that one offline.
That sounds great. Perfect. Okay, next question. Can Dynamics 365 license users run apps with premium features in Power Platform environments, for example, with no D365 modules?
They cannot. So you're limited to the abilities you get in Power Platform through your Dynamics 365 license. They have to be in the context of Dynamics 365. The purpose of that overlap of licensing is really meant to just help Dynamics 365 customers use Dynamics in a more efficient way or in an automated way, or build apps around it. So it's not like, oh, you're a Dynamics 365 customer. Well, here you go. You can now do anything you want with Power Apps, Power Automate. It's really, they want to keep you in Dynamics, but they're going to give you capabilities of Power Apps, Power Automate, as long as you stay within Dynamics 365.
Great, thank you. Next question, does Teams need to be enabled in the tenancy to deploy agents to M365 Copilot?
You know, that's an interesting one that came up with a customer I had recently, because I had a customer that did not have, they weren't using Teams. They had Microsoft 365, but they didn't want Teams. And they wanted to do some agents through Copilot Studio. And they said, well, we're building these agents. We're going to deploy to the 365 Copilot channel. And they found that you have to have Teams enabled in order to do that. And I verified that is the case. So the answer to the question is yes, you do need to have Teams enabled in order to deploy an agent to Microsoft 365 Copilot, even if you're not using Teams.
Okay, great question. Next question, is an M365 unattended subscription required to have Microsoft host a Power Automate process?
Right, so that's interesting because Microsoft 365 offers an unattended subscription, completely separate from Power Platform. So if you have mailboxes for conference rooms, for example, or for some other non-user related thing, you would have to have an unattended Microsoft 365 E3 subscription for that. So then the question is, well, now that you're going to do an unattended flow, let's say through hosted process, do you have to buy this E3 license, unattended license, to run alongside the unattended flow that's running in a hosted process in Microsoft Data Center? And the answer is no, actually. As soon as you buy the hosted process, that Microsoft just takes care of it from there. They will run your flow unattended in a VM in their data center, and they don't make you buy an additional Microsoft 365 license to support that platform.
That's very interesting.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, then a follow-up to the D365 question. Can Power Apps Premium licensed users run apps in D365 environments if they're not using any entities in the D365 data model?
Just thinking about this one. My guess on this is yes, but I don't want to have, I want to check on this actually, and I'm going to consult with our Dynamics analyst who actually knows a whole bunch about how to use it within Dynamics. So let me check with that, and we'll get back to this person with a clear answer on that question.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. That is all the questions we have. Is there anything you'd like to say before I close us out?
I just would say that Power Platform has a lot of moving pieces, and that's just the technical side. And once you get into the licensing side, it gets even more fun to deal with these different licensing types. So we try to have you covered there. We're trying to simplify it and produce diagrams and explain all the end cases and all the scenarios. It's not easy. I don't think anyone out there would say, yeah, it's very straightforward. Not only that, but it tends to get more complex over time. So we're constantly watching and analyzing and reporting on it. So I hope our reports and analysis is of assistance to all of you out there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next month.